They step into the biggest shows with the biggest names. And sometimes they get written on or off in a moment's notice. It's time to find out all the dramatic details of what it's like to be a guest star. With your host, Pete Ferrero.
Let's go.
There you are. Hello.
Hi.
This is really awesome. Thank you for doing this.
You're welcome.
I'm glad.
I mean, if anyone, why not me?
Right. Exactly.
I know all about this shit. So
I mean, in all seriousness, when I was looking up like guest star people, I was like, yeah, but Paula Marshall has really kind of done this forever, right?
So yes, I'm so old. And I think my first guest spot, one of the first anyway, was Seinfeld. Like,
yeah.
What? Come on.
Right. I want to ask you about that. Okay. Well, hey, welcome to Guest Star. I'm here with Paula Marshall, who has done so many iconic things and been a part of culture as a guest star. You know, you've been on shows as a series regular, so you've been a part of the acting world for a very long time and some really big things. I mean, you're currently in something that's huge right now, which is, you know, everybody's talking about with Euphoria.
Yeah. That's crazy, right? I mean, finally, I was so excited. Marcia actually got something to say. I freaked out when I read the script. I was like, Sam, you know, you wrote this for Marcia. He's like, I know.
Wait a minute. Let me go back and look. Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah.
You know, he never said much. So, and I was fine with that because I never fucked up my lines. So.
Right. All right. Let's go back to the beginning though. Tell me about where the acting bug started with you.
Gosh. I grew up in Maryland, and unlike most of the kids like now, or you start acting in high school, I never did that. I was captain of the pom-pom squad, so I never got any like theater experience. But I modeled, believe it or not.
No, I believe it.
New York City, back in the 80s, and I met a woman named Jan Stevens and Jay Sumner, and Jay was kind of like in charge of this agency. She was a booker at a Panache modeling agency, and she kind of turned me into the actress that I am today. She said, we were at this restaurant bar in DC called Champions, and we were having a drink, and she said, you know, you really are so much more interesting in person than you are on a piece of paper in a photo. And I think you should be an actress. I'm like, who do you know? She goes, a lot of people. So cut to when I ended up moving to New York, she introduced me to an old friend, manager, Davian Littlefield, who was kind of a big manager at the time in New York City. So I moved to New York. I modeled. That was kind of like my waitressing job, which paid a lot more, and I didn't have to work as often.
And you didn't have to remember anything.
Nothing. So you just kind of showed up, and they put hair and makeup on you, and you stood there. And so that was kind of my waitressing job while I studied acting with a guy named Tony Abeson. And that's kind of the beginning.
Well, when you were I'm curious for you, when you weren't really someone who did any acting in high school. So do you feel like, and I'm sure you've now been around other actors who have that experience, right?
Yeah.
I mean, so for you studying acting, you came from really nothing. So you were just fresh to it.
Yeah. Although my mom did save this thing from elementary school. It's like, you know, when you do those profile pictures and it's black and then there's white, and it said on there, I want to be an actress. And she showed it to me one day after I became an actress. I was like, oh my God, I had no idea. I think it was maybe 8 or 9. But no, I didn't really have the bug. It just kind of happened. So it's strange.
I don't know. I've talked to people that's had that experience too. It's an interesting different way of coming into it. You know what I mean? For someone that's known they're, you know, from they were 5 and all that stuff, you know, that we've always hear about, but it's definitely cool. And you did a soap, right? Is that where?
Oh yeah. So I moved to New York City, and I think one of my first jobs after doing commercials, which is kind of like the door opening to acting, because it's like a one-day acting job. And you get a lot of money. So that's always fun, or used to anyway, for commercials. I did One Life to Live, and I don't even remember the character's name. It wasn't a big part, but
Kelly Weston, I think. Yeah.
Oh shit.
No, this is an IMDb that's helpful.
Well, you could,
yeah.
You like that, and you look it up. So I worked as the bartender, and like with Robert Woods, I think his name was. And yeah, so that was kind of like my introduction, I guess. And then, you know, pilot season, which kind of used to be more of a thing than it is now. Every spring I would fly out to LA and I would audition for things and meet everybody and drive around and pick up scripts, because no one had computers then. I'm that old, that you would go and pick up a script in the box at your agent's, like after hours. You were so excited and you look to see like how many scripts you got. And that meant you had that many auditions for that week or whatever. Now it's so easy, like click, oh, there's the script, click.
And the audition's probably like this too, right? It's probably like on Zoom now. It's not even an in-person thing.
God, it's so hard. I have a room now that's called the tape room. So I put myself on tape up there. I've got beautiful light. I've got the backdrop. I'm kind of like I'm a photographer by hobby. And so it's fun to have this little room, although it's just for taping. It's not for any kind of photography work that I do. So it's weird, but the callbacks are hideous, like, especially for comedies. Timing, there's a lag. If the person's not that good, I'm like, hey,
Wi-Fi issue, whatever.
But there's like no room, there's no people, there's no nothing. So, I mean, and I haven't booked a comedy on Zoom yet. I booked some dramas, but it's not fun. I can't, part of me loves it because I get to do it when I want. I get to edit it, the best scene that I think I look good in and I'm funniest or whatever. But there's no one there besides your husband or your daughter reading with you.
Yeah. I'm curious the process in that time period though, of going on auditions, and like now you're in this, right? So now you're in the bubble of I'm an actor, right? You're you know, yes. I didn't even know I wanted to do this. Now I'm doing it. So now you're full throttle and you're going out on auditions, and you know, I think there's always a constant thing in any person's profession where you're comparing, especially in acting, you're comparing to other people that you're sitting in a waiting room. And now you're like, we're all up for this.
Yeah.
What is that like for you at that time, in that time period?
You know what? I was one of those girls who I would call up my friend and say, hey, you should read for this.
Amazing.
Because if I'm going to get it, I'm going to get it. Just because I tell Laura Layton that she should read for it, or anybody else, you know, Machen Amick, we become friends. I miss the rooms. We call them like the rooms. It's those hallways that you're waiting outside to go in the room, and you get to know a lot of people. I remember Mariska Hargitay. I dropped that for you. Mariska and I, we knew each other from, you know, the rooms around, and we auditioned for a film. It was a kind of a callback, and I'll never forget. I've told this story before. I don't know if anyone remembers it or not, but it was for a film with cute English guy married to a model, used to be. Come on. Anyway, it'll come back to me. He was there and we were reading with him, and Mariska comes out after her audition and she was pissed. And I'm like, what happened? She goes, you know what the director said to me? Don't cry. You're not pretty when you cry. She said, fuck you, and walked out. And I'm like, oh, Mariska Hargitay. I am like the biggest fan. And then I went in and I didn't cry because who knew how pretty I was when I cried.
Right. They took that advice though. I'm not crying.
Don't cry unless it's pretty cries. But yeah, that's where you get to meet, you know, your people and the rooms and from around. And I really do miss that for sure.
Yeah, especially in that time period. I would imagine that it was, you know, that was the way of the world, and that's how you were finding.
Yeah.
All of that sort of helps in the networking process of like, oh, Paula would be great for this, or even if you saw somebody, you know, oh, she would be great for this, or he would be great for this, right? There's a part of that.
There's a back and forth. I have actor friends who would, you know, email me or call me and say, yeah, you should read for this thing. It's really good. Yeah, because I don't know, maybe like your agent just didn't clock it or something. But
for me now, the first place I saw you is The Wonder Years.
Oh, The Wonder Years.
But there is also Life Goes On. So I don't know what comes, like, I don't know if it's there, what's the chicken and the egg there. Right. Hey, I don't know which one's first, but.
Me neither. Wait a minute. Life Goes On. So I was in that and I was in The Wonder Years.
Yeah. No memory.
You know, I really should have Googled myself before I did this, so I'd remember all these things.
But
let's talk. Wonder Years was first.
I mean, they're two huge shows. You know what I mean? I mean, The Wonder Years particularly. I mean, I think when you came into the Wonder Years, it was in the last season of the Wonder Years too. So I think it was, you were dating Wayne, right?
Yes.
Yeah, you had a kid and all this. What was your experience like with a show like that?
I was very new to work, but starting to work here and there. Just the how professional everyone was. Dan Lauria was just this amazing guy. Fred, I used to joke because Fred was young and he would have to go to school. So if he was in a scene with me, it was a piece of tape and a C-stand. And sometimes they would say, "Oh, do you want his stand-in to stand there and kind of look at the stand-in?" And then someone else, like the script supervisor, would do his lines. I'm like, "No, give me a piece of tape." Well, you cut to years later, I'm working on a TV show with Jimmy Burrows, and Fred decides to show up and say hi to Jimmy because they were working on the same lot or something. And he comes up to me, he's like, "Paula," and I didn't recognize him. He goes, "It's Fred Savage." And I go, "Oh, I'm sorry, I need a piece of tape." And and he's like, "Oh my God, that's very funny." And I'm like, literally, that's what I remember about any kind of back and forth with you and me. Um, I mean, it was a treat. But I think when you're so young, you don't, you just kind of go and it happens and then it's gone. You're not really taking it all in necessarily. I think that happens later.
But a couple things about this is, it's interesting because you come in, you're there's a whole thing about being an actor and then going in from audition to audition, getting jobs, but then you come to a show like that, which is so hugely successful, and all of the actors like Fred and all those guys, they're huge stars at that point.
Yeah.
So what is that perspective like as a guest star? You're learning that world. And you only really have about 10 days, maybe max, to kind of like, and you were there for a few episodes, so you probably got a little.
Yes. I think because they were so nice, I wasn't intimidated. There was a freedom and an openness, and a welcoming to the guest stars, I should say. I think Rob Lowe's brother was on that, or was that the other one? Life Goes On. Chad was on one of them, but they were nice. So they didn't intimidate me. And as you know, when you meet someone and you are intimidated, then you get nervous. Then you're like, "Oh God, I can't screw up and I got to make sure my lines." But no, everyone was so nice that I felt very much part of it, especially then when you're recurring and you kind of come back, a couple times. I wasn't really scared. I probably should have been.
Well, that comes up a couple of times where you go on for a guest star probably, and then they're like, "Well, we're going to bring you back for a couple of more things," right?
That
Especially
happened.
on those two those, because it happens in two of those shows, The Life Goes On and The Wonder Years. But so what is that call like for you at that time? It must have been super exciting.
Well, I think I can't really remember if it started out being one and then it turned into something. It was, just coming from not knowing anybody. I'm not related to Penny or Gary.
Right. I know that's a popular question.
Yeah, not related. I even met Gary Marshall on a film project, and I had him write me a note that said, "Paula is not my daughter, and Penny's my sister," or something. And he was trying to clear up all of that for everybody.
I love that.
This little note. But it's just, I just couldn't believe I got to do it. And my luck, I worked hard, but I didn't start when I was 16. So I kind of came to California, later in the game. And, but I looked really young, and that always is good. But just kind of pinching myself because I would get one thing and then I'd get another thing and I'm like, "Oh, maybe I'm okay. Maybe I'm kind of good at this."
That's the coolest thing about your career, is that really you don't have a period where you stop working. Like you're working show to show to show. And I think so many actors would love to have that happen for them, but you have been blessed in that way that you are very good, and also it just happens that way. And there's probably a hustle and a drive and all of that stuff that goes with it, right?
Well, you never give up. A lot of women will give up. I'm like, "No, I'm not gonna." I decided I was doing this, as my husband would say, "We're lifers. This is it. This is what we do." Maybe it would have been different any number of my many shows would have lasted more than 2 seasons. Like maybe I would have been, you know, Julie Bowen, that like you do one thing, or Mariska, 100 years later, Mariska is still on that show. It's so crazy how, because a friend of mine, I was talking about how, you know, one thing hits and the other thing doesn't. And, you know, we read for all kinds of things. And when you're young, there's so many different things. And I really just wanted a comedy. But, you know, the things you pass on that you're like, man, I like it. And then they're huge hits.
Give me something that you passed on.
I knew you were going to say that. I can't really, like my husband has that more, like these dramas, these things, procedural things, which we don't really like doing. They're not as fun. And it's too like more of a story and more about the character. But, you know, back in the day when you had to pick and choose, or early on, you would book something and then you're like, oh, if I take this, then what's later on? You don't know. Now it's like, what is it? I'll read for it. Like really, my t-shirt just says I'm paying for private school. So for my daughter.
Right.
Well,
one more on the Wonder Years. Because that's the last season of that show. Are you, and I know that show is speculative, like they didn't really know that they didn't know it was coming back, and then it got canceled. Are you even aware of some of that stuff? Because I mean, at that point, there would have been a potential, you know, if they come back for another season, I'm sure your character, Bonnie, would have maybe potentially came back and done more with that character. Are you even aware that that's going on?
No, I don't think, I certainly wouldn't have known anything about that. No. And it is a pleasant surprise when, like on Californication, it was supposed to be one episode. And I remember during the scene where we're having sex, and there was a moment where he falls off of me and he picks up
it's hilarious. The thing,
and he pukes. Well, there's a reason. So he pukes, right? And then we're standing there, you know, naked, and he's holding in the puke. And I'm like, oh my God, that's really very realistic puke. And he goes, you know, it would be, I go, it's kind of making me sick. And he goes, you know, it'd be funny. Wouldn't it be funny if you puked? And I'm like, oh my God, a sympathy puke. That would be genius. So like I raise my hand and I'm like, hey guys, Scott Wynant, the director, I'm like, could I puke? And he goes, Paula, no one wants to see a naked girl puke. I'm like, let me do one take of a puke, you know, before we turn around the camera. Let me just do one before the people come in. He's like, oh, all right, let's put the corn chowder in Paula's mouth. And Maya's my daughter. Sorry.
Yeah, so you're good. Yeah.
A second. And so we do I puke. It was one take. I think I even like still have my G-string on, because like at one point I put like a little bit of clothes on just so I'm not as naked. So I think I see it, because no one really thought they were going to use it.
Right.
And then I ad-libbed something. Like I giggled and I said, we were just so high. I don't know what happened. And then David Duchovny runs over to the writer and says, give Paula the button. The button is the last line, the last little joke, the last click before you start the scene.
Yeah.
So, and I remember going over there and them saying, oh shit, that was really funny. And maybe the writer said something like, you naked puke on camera in one take, you're coming back next season. And I came back next season for like 10 episodes. Yeah. It was a very long story.
No, but that's a great story though. No, that's a great story though, about how trajectory can change just from one improv scene.
I kind of feel like that's why they did it. And they're like, oh, I think this girl would be good with David. And let's kind of see where that would go. They just, you know, they like you, right? And you're nice. Maybe they like to work with you. And I bring cookies and stuff to set. You bribe them a little bit. And then they hire you back. So
that's great. And doing the nude stuff and all that, you've done a bunch of that. So it's a part of your world, right?
Yes, I have.
Has never been a problem for you?
No, I think for Californication, I had 4 days notice. 4 days.
So you have to basically decide, are you good with this or not?
Well, you kind of don't. You're like, well, I'm not really going to be naked. Am I? I mean, that's what those girls do, but I'm an actress. I don't really have to take my clothes off. You kind of go, it's not really going to be, but you're on the set and you're like, oh, yeah, I'm pretty naked. It's like, I think I just gotten over the chickenpox, believe it or not. It was so weird. I got chickenpox like really, or no, that was different nude scene.
Okay.
It was a movie called The New Age, where I think I got the chicken pox, and then they did have to do some body makeup on me because I had chicken pox still on me. It's uncomfortable. It's never like fun, and it's weird, and it's a closed set, and everyone can talk about stuff, and hopefully you're working with someone who's not taking advantage and making you feel uncomfortable. And David was great. I talked football while we were naked, like waiting to roll. I would look back at him as he was doing his stuff and talk about football.
I'm curious. I mean, look, the conversations are evolving about things like this, and you've been working for a long time. So I'm sure you've seen, back in the day, doing that was probably fine, whatever, you know what I mean? But now there's instructors, there's people on, what is your thoughts on some of that? Like, you don't need I'm good, I don't need the instructor, right? No. I'm the instructor. Yeah.
I think it's really good, so each person feels comfortable with the other one, because sometimes you don't work with nice, respectful people. And you want to know what's going to go down, where he's going to touch you, what he's going to, where his mouth is going. I've been very lucky. I'm also very vocal. If I don't like something, I will say something. But maybe women, maybe men aren't as comfortable on set to speak up and stick up for themselves. Maybe working on Euphoria, talk about being naked. Oof, just glad Marsha's not naked. But I would, if I had more than 4 days, I would do it for Sam. But you were in an interesting conversation that I was going to bring up later. But yeah. I mean, there's this whole thing about Sam, right? I mean, like, I love Euphoria. I think it's incredible. I'm all in. But there is this, anytime the show has this sort of fan base that's like ravaged and they're talking in communities, all these things come up, and we're in a different time period, and he gets a lot of, shit, I guess is the best word. I don't know. What is your thoughts on some of that's been coming up? It's interesting. I've only heard the hearsay about it, just like you're mentioning.
It's very Judge Judy of you, by the way you said that.
Right. Yeah. I have one, Marsha doesn't take her clothes off. I have not experienced anything like that on set. I don't know if there's any issues. I mean, and I don't want to speak for anybody, but it's called Euphoria. We knew what this show is about. The pilot was very clear. It's a very sexual show, but I'm pretty sure if the girls aren't comfortable, you talk to the director and you go, hey, can we do it a little like this? But I don't know. I think there's a way around it. There's what is her name? Oh shit, not Cassie. One of the actresses on the show. I've never seen her boobs. So why is that? Like, I've never seen them. So I'm pretty sure Alexa. Like, I don't think I've ever seen her boobs. Have I? Maybe once. I think it works. Here's the great thing about Sam. Although there's so many great things about Sam. One, he's a freaking genius. Like, he's like,
the show is incredible.
He's like magic. Like, he's one of these artistic, he'll just go like, we're going to shoot till we get it. There's no time thing. There's no, we got to turn her. It's like, let's play. Let's make something amazing. And the camera work, and it's stunning. The lighting, I can't even say enough nice things about it. But you know what Sam does? Sam's like, we're going to see some tits. I'm going to see some dick then. I mean, it's fair. It's fair. And I'm like,
the scene that you do in that episode 4 of season 2, with Eric, it's really, it's next level. You know what I mean? It's really, the performance is really great on everybody's part. Why don't you talk? I mean, I know we're in Euphoria, that's fine. But tell me about doing that scene and being in that room in that moment. That was some really incredible stuff.
In Euphoria. Yes. Well, Eric Dane won. I can't believe those lines. He never messed up once. It was like a 2-page monologue. I mean, one, it was, I always think